So thanks again to everybody for coming. So one of the really fun things about putting this day together was having the opportunity myself to meet female entrepreneurs in Evanston that I have either heard of and never met, or in fact, in a number of cases, actually never heard of. The moderator for our first panel is one of those people, and I think you're going to find that she is, a one-woman dynamo. So Althea, and by the way, you have the full bios of everybody who's on the panel. So one of the reasons we gave you that is so we don't have to go through, 20 minutes in each panel of going through everything. But I did just want to say a couple of things about each of the moderators. So Althea did a little bit of a career change. She started out in the financial world, and she's added some education and refocused and started her own business. She is a career counselor, and she works with people in all ranges of organizations. And I think, when you listen to her, you'll agree that not only has she taken on a challenging job, those of us who are in the corporate world know how challenging it is sometimes to counsel, executives. But she also has a ton of great experience to bring to the do you want to start a business or not question. So I'm going to introduce with no further ado, Althea. And if we get the whole panel in, ladies, come on down. I'm going to turn the microphone over to her. She can introduce her panelists and careful. And take it away. Okay. And there's a second mic for you guys. Okay, and pass it back and forth.
So we need the mic because of the recording, correct? Okay, because I have a pretty loud voice that I thought, do I need it? But we need it. So I'm so excited to be here and share this panel with three really amazing business owners. And we are going to discuss launching. Know that this is going to be conversational. So we want to share real tips, real strategies, and real struggles that we faced in our business and how we've overcome them or how we're overcoming them. I will leave 15 minutes near the end of the panel for you to ask questions. So jot your questions down now, and because we want to answer them. Okay. So I'm going to read from my notes. I'll just briefly introduce my panelists, and then they're going to introduce themselves, and you'll learn more about them in the questions, okay? So Elizabeth, who's at the far end, is the founder and executive director of Allowance for Good. And she has a real mission and purpose for her business, which she'll share in a moment. In between, in the middle, is Ellen King. She's the co-owner and head baker, and I hope I say this right, of Hewn, that's on Dempster, if any of you have not yet experienced her. And then right next to me is Jennifer Alexander, who is a social entrepreneur who, again, has really mission and purpose-driven in her business. And if you haven't yet, I know you will experience her coffee that Nell said is in the kitchen. So I'm just going to ask each of you to tell briefly, really quick, a little more about your business and why did you open your business? So let's start on the far end. Oh,
good afternoon. It's such a privilege to be here. I'm Elizabeth, and I'm the founder and executive director of Allowance for Good. Our mission is to build the rising generation of philanthropic leaders, to cultivate them as global citizens, and help them empower others around the world to achieve their full potential. So what that means is that we work with youth ages 13 to 18 to help them recognize and build their capacity as global change agents. So why do I do what I do? About 8 years ago, I had the privilege of traveling to rural Guatemala on business. I was there scoping a trip at the time for MBA students focused on fair trade and organic coffee farming. It was a fabulous trip. But the moment that left the greatest impression on me during that entire trip was an image of a young school-age girl carrying pound after pound of coffee on her back. And it wasn't so much that I was impressed by her strength, which I was, right? She's like just lugging this huge bag of coffee. But I was shocked that she wasn't in school on a school day. And I I didn't really understand why. It's a complex challenge that young girls and their families like this face. It wasn't until a few years later when I was studying international comparative education in graduate school that I began to understand that trade-off. And I wanted to create a healthier future for girls like that. I knew I couldn't do it alone. I recognized that there was a capacity to build up among the youth of rising generations, to build up their capacity as change agents, to help them recognize how they can be catalysts for good, which is where the name Allowance for Good comes from. Youth using what they're allowed in life for positive impact in the world. So that's why I started AFG and why we do what we do today.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it's hard to follow. I'm not helping kids, maybe high schoolers. I started a bakery called Hune about 1.5 years ago with a business partner, and my background was I had worked in food and I had worked in on different farms. I kind of had an eclectic background, which I think you find with people in food. They come from all over, and I just really. My background was in like savory foods, but I had done bread when I lived in Seattle. I didn't do bread really well, so that's why I left it to bakers that had bakeries in Seattle. But once I moved here, I really was missing this bread that I just took for granted eating every day. And it was just a passion that I became, obsessed with it. It was like literally an obsession that I just focused on bread and recontacted everybody that had ever made bread that I thought was amazing and just kind of learned on my own. And, the name Hune was spawned from really my background in history. I have a degree in history, and I did some historic preservation work, and when we would be dating a building, we'd find like a hand-hewn beam, and that's how we knew that it was done by hand and not by like a circular saw or an up-and-down saw, so we would date the building. And to me, it was always amazing to just think of this artisan that had made this beam a couple hundred years ago. I was on the coast of Maine doing this. And for bread making, it's such an act of, your hands and being connected to the farmer that grew the flour and then the miller, that the transfer was to name the company an Old English name. Since I'm English and Irish, I'm not French. I love French food, but I really felt like it needed to be an American bakery influenced by the best traditions and techniques, but with a strong root in kind of American food. And so that's how we started. We do bring in some high school kids to work and hopefully teaching them, how to work with their hands and not be so technically savvy. I mean, our place is all very old school. We still mix the bread by hand, and we actually don't have too many high-tech things at the bakery. Maybe our oven. That's the only thing that's high-tech. So that's it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Jennifer, founder of Chapin Coffee. And I just love how connected we all are, because Elizabeth, your story is the perfect introduction also for what we're doing at Chapin. My husband and I started our socially conscious coffee company as a way to create a vehicle where Guatemalan specialty coffee is used to help improve the lives of Guatemalan children. And I'll just pivot right off of Elizabeth's story about the girl who was working the fields instead of in school, and add to that this girl was most likely, if she was living in a coffee-growing region, suffering from malnutrition. 3 out of every 4 kids who live in the coffee-growing regions in Guatemala don't get enough nutrition every day, and it leads to all sorts of issues, physical stunting, cognitive delays, and then part of that is that it reinforces the cycle of poverty, which has them then leaving school to help work and support the family because they already don't have enough food, so they need all hands on deck. So my husband and I, Carlos and I, we both have connections to Guatemala. My grandfather was actually an entrepreneur who lived down in Guatemala City in the 70s, mentoring small business owners and helping them start up their businesses using what he learned in his business to help these people. Side note, we actually got married in March in Guatemala, and my uncle was able to reconnect with that family who they helped however many years ago that was, almost 45, I guess. So I feel like I'm carrying on, this tradition that my grandfather started. And then Carlos's family is all from Guatemala, so he spent summers growing up there, spending time on coffee plantations, where he developed both a passion for coffee But also, he was friends with these very children, and at a very young age, he started noticing that something was different and something was not right, and he wanted to do something about it. So luckily, the stars brought us together, and we've launched Chapin Coffee. Every bag of coffee that we sell, we serve 3 meals to children in these coffee-growing regions.
Awesome. And really briefly, why did I go from being a corporate CPA and now am a career and executive coach? Well, I believe that we are born on purpose, with a purpose, and for a purpose. And I always wanted to do the work that God wanted me to do. I wanted to have a positive impact on others. I wanted to utilize my innate gifts to help people grow, change, and lead really fulfilling lives. And I was working in corporate America, and I got to that point, which so many of you probably were at that point too, where you didn't want your boss's job, right? And you said, you know I have so much more to contribute. I know I'm not utilizing my full potential. And so then I made that leap and went through training and education, and now I coach purpose-driven leaders and visionaries, specifically executives, business owners, who want to increase their income doing meaningful work that they love and know that they're meant to do. And I love specifically working with leaders and visionaries because we know, because all of you are leaders, that you impact a leader, you change organization, you change a community. So that's what drew me to, and that's my bigger why for my business. And what I always know when we talk to women entrepreneurs, it's that bigger why, right? It's why do we start the business? We never hear, we don't often hear, right? Because I wanted to make $1 million. But we obviously want to be financially secure, but there's that deeper meaning. So I want to ask you, what are some of the major challenges? Because I want us to be real, okay? What are some of the major challenges, let's just, you experience in launching your business, and now that you've been in business, maybe the first 6 to 12 months? And I'd like to hear from everyone. You can start, Jennifer, since you have it. Yeah, major challenge, like first, in launching it in the first 6 to 12 months.
Sure. So I would say that the first major challenge was just launching it. I remember a year ago at this time sitting in my then fiance's apartment with a big poster board trying to write down all the things that needed to cross that starting line before we could launch. And it felt like 1,000 things. And there's always something else that has to get over that hump. So having the patience and being dedicated enough to our vision and passionate enough about our vision to, really continue to, I don't want to say push those things forward, because that's another piece I've learned, that sometimes the more you push, the more that's just an indication that you're not focusing on the right thing right now.
So that's a tweetable, right? The more you push is an indication that you're not focusing on the right things.
Right now.
Right now, okay.
So yeah, I'll leave other in-business answers to my other two compadres here. But yeah, just getting to launch and completing all the things that needed to be completed and having the patience to keep going when it seemed like it was never going to happen.
I guess for me, I equate my business to having a baby, because I thought, once the baby's born, everything is so much easier, like getting over childbirth, because I was so afraid of it. It's like, but once the baby's here, then I'll just be back to regular. And I think everybody knows that that's like the easy part almost, right? It's like the birth was not easy, but it was so much easier than the day-to-day. And I think that, I've never slept a solid night after my son came, and then once I did, then I opened my business, and now I really don't. So it's like, I think the biggest challenge is that after the launch, the reality sets in that this is every day. It's not like you just punch in and you leave. It's like, I see a lot of people shaking their heads. It's like you're never free from the worry of everything. I mean, like right now I'm here and my oven's getting fixed because something's broken on it. And it's like, that's the reality is the stuff you thought you would spend all your time on, I'm spending time on stuff I never even thought that would happen, and half of it involves some sort of tool that I've had to learn how to work with. And I think that's the thing, is if you're not willing to basically do whatever, then, you probably shouldn't go into business for yourself, because, the stuff that I thought, well, I could hire somebody to do that, I don't. I do the dishes probably more than anybody there. And I know in everybody else's business, it's like filing paperwork, or whatever. It's the stuff that's so boring that you didn't think you would do once you own your own business that you do. And I think that that's the challenge, is just kind of keeping the momentum every day and doing almost everything. And I know I had a friend who started a business, and he told me, it was Paul from Few Spirits, and he said, well, your first job now is to put yourself out of a job and hire somebody for that. And I did that, and then now I'm like at the bottom of the ladder because I'm doing the dishes and everything. So it's like, I don't know, maybe other people have better, more business backgrounds that have better answers, but that's my answer.
So what I'm just hearing from Ellen is that reality, right? Like what I thought it would be is very different than what it actually is, right? And then that mindset, do whatever it takes. Okay, thank you. That's a tweetable. Hashtag NWC launch.
What you said exactly about putting yourself out of business is so true, and doing things that you never expected doing, and that it's okay, right? That it's okay to give yourself the freedom to try and stretch in new ways that you never imagined. Some of my greatest challenges, at first, I started Allowance for Good, or at least the idea, about 4 years ago, and Allowance for Good is organized as a nonprofit organization. So let me tell you, there's a lot of paperwork to fill out, and I did it all on my own. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to feel such a part of the process and going through it, that I wanted to recognize the type of work that needs to happen in order to create something from the ground up, so that I could be there in the future when someone else wanted to go down that road too, and help mentor them along the way. I don't think at first I realized why I wanted that to be such a part of what I was doing, but now that's something that I just love doing, is mentoring individuals. The other challenge I faced is very specific. I launched Allowance for Good while living in California, and not about 6 to 8 months later, ended up moving to Evanston. So there was a new challenge of creating new networks, and I was really afraid of that at first. But networking is really powerful and really fun because it means building relationships. And I've become friends with many of you in this room because of my belief that I want to spend time cultivating relationships that are going to empower Allowance for Good to be a stronger organization, and to help me as an individual feel cultivated so that I can go on leading Allowance for Good to new heights.
Wow, awesome. And my challenge, so, CPAs, right, we're like behind the office, behind our computers, and wow, I didn't realize all the marketing and sales. I'm behind the, now I'm in front, and literally for me, and my sister is a marketing professional and a sponsor, it's like, it was really using that other side of my brain. And so that I can say is, again, it was like the reality, oh, I didn't realize that for my success in my business is largely marketing and sales. And wow, but that's not what I realized I'd be spending most of my time doing. And that you have to love, this is what's helped me, you have to love all aspects of running a business. You don't have to do them all, but you have to love them all, because filling out the paperwork, washing the dishes, and I didn't, figuring out what task to deal with first is actually all components, right, of a successful business. So, what are you, and I'd love to hear from you, what's your, and this is a hard one to be succinct, but what has helped you overcome your most pressing challenges? If you were to say, this is what I tell myself, this is what I do, what's the strategy that you use when you have a new challenge? How do you overcome them? Okay.
I'll start, and I'll be quick. I talk to people about it. I oftentimes, if it's weighing on me so much that I don't know how to handle a situation, go seek advice from other people. I think surrounding yourself with advocates, advisors, mentors, a partner is really important in helping to get yourself out of the weeds in the moment and have the opportunity to reflect before taking action on whatever it is that might be a difficult challenge facing you.
Okay. So seek advice. Doing it alone, as I like to say, is the hard way.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think you seek advice, but it's good to get a bunch of different opinions, but really, like, trust your own instinct on it. Like, I like to get a bunch of different people's advice, and then, you know, sometimes I inevitably do nothing for a little bit, because it's almost better for me to clear my mind, because if I'm, like, focused on something, you know, it's like, I think I had read something once where if you really want to, you know, solve a problem, it's like do nothing for a little bit so that you're doing something different. Like some of the best innovations come from when you're like gardening or going for a run or something where you're not trying to figure the problem out anymore. And I think sometimes people beat themselves up because they just like, you spiral where you just keep thinking. And then instead you like literally do nothing and, you know, think you're being lazy. And then the solution comes. So I think more than anything, throughout all of this, I've faced problems where I'm like, our oven blew up literally a week after we got a brand new oven. And I was like, oh my, we're out of business. That's it. We're totally closed. This is ridiculous. And then we figured out like the solution to it, which was way more complex than you want to hear. But I think the thing I learned is there is a solution for everything, no matter how big the obstacle, even if you think, I can't come up with $300,000, that's impossible. It's not, and it's amazing when you just start thinking, I don't know how, but I'm gonna figure it out, and so that's really powerful because no matter how big, there's a solution, and somebody can help you, or you'll garden and figure it out yourself.
So she's given you permission. It's okay to take that walk. It's okay to doodle. It's okay to take that yoga class when you've got, you know, a $300,000 problem, but you can't figure it out, and you are working on your business. Okay, great, thank you.
I would echo both of those things. I'm very fortunate to have a partner in my business, and so those moments where I'm freaking out, if I allow myself to be vulnerable and go to my husband, husband and business partner, that's some deep stuff. When I allow myself to be vulnerable and actually go to him and say, oh, I'm freaking out, then often he's not freaking out and he'll balance that. And then to echo what Ellen said as well, it's a practice, but I build in time every day. I start my day for me. So whether that's going for a run, going to the gym and swimming, practicing yoga, I used to teach yoga so I can practice on my kitchen floor and, you know, be fine. Really taking that time. And then a tiny little practice that everybody can do, I set my alarm for 1:08 p.m. every day on my phone. It goes off. And whatever I'm doing, I stop. And I take 3 deep breaths. And I have a mantra that I say to myself, which is I surrender, I receive. And that will it's like a reboot for the computer. And it's, you know, my phone forces me to take time to do it. I wouldn't remember to do it otherwise. I wouldn't, whatever. So it's like this really quick way to get in the garden or go for the run or whatever, and it happens every day.
Awesome, awesome, real practical, real doable. And I know for myself, for those of us who worked in corporate, and part of the thing is, you know, knowing all the answers, right? How dare we be vulnerable? You know, how dare we act like, you know, we've got, you know, everything together, and with social media, and we love social media, and with all the magazines, it just looks like, you know, I had a cupcake idea, and then it became $1 million business overnight, right? So I know for me, it was allowing myself to ask for help, and particularly allowing myself to ask for help from my team. And what I've learned is your team will amaze you if you allow them to, you know, and so getting out of your own way. So for me, it's just being vulnerable. And then as I've grown, though, it's good to take advice from the right people, because sometimes we're taking it from people who don't have a big vision for themselves or haven't gotten outside of their comfort zone. And so you're asking for advice from the wrong people, and that's dangerous. But then seeing, okay, getting feedback, but then what's that inner voice saying? You know, what are you learning from that? Okay, what do you wish you had known before you started your business?
everything that's good takes time.
Tweetable.
I'm like the Twitter bird today.
Yeah. Tweetable.
Yeah, there's
everything that's good takes time.
Yeah, just to share an analogy that I learned from one of my mentors that I have to bring myself back to all the time, because again, this is a practice for me too. I want everything to happen now. Is that anything that we're building, our lives as a whole, a certain project, a certain relationship, that you can think of it like a garden. And with a garden, you plant the seeds first, and then there's stuff happening under the ground, and you can't see anything. So it might feel like, oh my gosh, I've done all this work, and then it's nothing. And that's the time when it's really easy to quit and walk away and get really discouraged. But if you remember that in nature and in life, things take that time. If it's really going to be good, it needs roots. So knowing what pieces of your business and your life or relationship or whatever is in the seed stage, is in the sprout stage. Maybe there's one flower. Maybe it's growing into a vine, and then, a big redwood tree or a big, let's say, apple tree that produces fruit. So my biggest challenge, and I still catch myself with this, is expecting the little sprouts to be giving off big apples and then getting discouraged.
Okay. Everything good takes time. Yeah.
I feel like mine is so, it's not philosophical. I just wish I knew more electrical. That's what I wish.
Yeah. You wish this is good to know. If someone's thinking of owning a bakery, they're thinking, oh, I love to bake. What else do I need to know? And you're saying, no, you need to know some electrical things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you transferred that into other businesses, I mean, I think it's like, if you're starting up a business, it's like you should really know accounting, that would be something very applicable. Don't depend on an accountant or whatever. I mean, kind of look at where your weak spot is, and I never would have, I knew electrical and, that kind of stuff. But I really, that became such a big thing for the bakery, and I didn't understand it. So in whatever you're doing, look at what is a big component of it, and then learn that. Yeah. So
Those are great. Let's go on. Yeah, those were good answers.
Yeah. No, we want to hear. What did you wish you knew? We want to. For the aspiring non-for-profit owners.
I have no tree motif. I don't know electrical. I wish I'd recognized that individuals really believe, especially in the nonprofit space, individuals really believe in missions. Individuals have their own interests that they want to contribute to. People inherently, for the most part, want to do good in the world. And in the work that I do, that means aligning individual interests with Allowance for Good. So when meeting with donors, if an individual doesn't align with what we're doing, they're not the right fit for our work, that's okay. Let's help them find what they would want to invest in on the social purpose side of things. And I think being comfortable and knowing that no is just a fine answer is something that took me a little time to realize, and something that I carry with me each day when I'm doing my own development work for the organization.
Wow, that's so powerful, because in terms of the no, we have to know as business owners what's not a good fit, both in clients, both in employees, both in customers. And no is a great answer. And from a sales perspective, we know that yes lives in no's, right? So hearing no, or being able to say, no, this is not a good fit, is a really powerful stance to be in. And being proactive and taking ownership of your career.
Can I say a little more about that?
Please.
So someone mentioned vulnerability earlier too, and I think with our work, when we finally got to a place where we could be really vulnerable, we finally recognized also what we're best at organizationally. We didn't take the time to recognize that right at the beginning, or take time to really analyze what is it that we're best at, because it turns out that's what we should be doing. And so we've been going through this strategic planning process recently, and that's really come to life as, aha, this is what we are best at, let's build on that. And I think that doesn't come until organizationally you allow yourself to be vulnerable. Or even personally, I'm a founder, and so sometimes it's hard to kind of let go and let other people take the reins for a little bit. But it's a good feeling now.
Yeah, awesome. So vulnerability, that's a theme that's running across. So here's the question I'd love to hear. The answer I'd love to hear. How has your business aspirations changed since launching? So from 4 years ago, a year ago, how's your aspirations changed since launching? And I'd love to hear from all of you.
Okay. How have they changed? Well, I think, you know, when you start out a business, you have super grand visions of how easy it'll be and how quickly you'll grow. And then the reality sets in, like I said, when you have like a newborn or a toddler at this point. And I think that now I'm just kind of focusing in on for us, what we do well and what I think we do well, instead of trying to do everything for everybody. We've still kept our mission pretty narrow with the food that we're doing, but even, you know, really feeling comfortable saying no when people ask for special things, knowing we can't do that. You know, I can't do like a special order for you because it throws the whole kitchen. I know that you might think it's really easy for me to just crank out one loaf of bread, but we have like a whole process in the back that it just, you know, like one little request like that can totally throw our day, which is so bizarre to me. Like, but it's, you know, it's like, what is it, when the lion stepped on a thorn or something and it like totally, isn't that got a thorn in his paw or whatever? It's like that little thorn was enough to bring down a lion. And it's the same with me. It's like being able to say no and be comfortable that we're not going to go out of business because I said no to somebody to do something. And so it's having that discipline and comfort, because saying no is actually allowing me to do what we do better.
I love that. From no, we're growing. The no allows us to grow. And also, I love the fact it's, I mean,
like
really.
how you change every.
That's tweetable.
I feel like I'm with, like, you know, some guru where it's like, beautiful.
No,
From
well,
no,
that's what,
we
yeah.
grow. It makes me
you.
sound
I'll
so
take
much
that.
better. I love it.
And also, what I was thinking is that you know your business, right? As customers, we have to lead our customers, right? We have to give them what they want, also what they need, and we know our business. I didn't know that. I would never know. That would throw you off. It's just one loaf, but you know your business. You know your business processes. So yeah, great.
So we launched in January, sold our first bag of coffee in February, so it hasn't been that long. But what I would say, even throughout the planning process, the aspiration in terms of the real essence of it, using specialty coffee to help improve the lives of Guatemalan children, that hasn't changed. What has changed over and over and over is the form, kind of like the how. How are we going to get there? One example is our distribution. You know, we started selling bags into small specialty retail shops, and what we've learned is that's wonderful, and it was actually perfect for the time, like it was the right thing for right then. But the way that we're really going to move the needle and make an impact is to go to where people are already drinking coffee, like offices, like cafes, restaurants. So we've shifted the how and shifted the form, the form has shifted us, you know, because we couldn't have known that until we tried something.
I'll echo a little bit of what Jennifer said, which is just staying true to who you are. And that is incredibly true for our work as an organization. We have a mission that leads us. It's really our beacon, and it shines a light on where we should always be headed, keeps us focused on our day-to-day, yet aspirational about what's to come. And when I first envisioned Allowance for Good organizationally, I thought we'd be a resource, a hub, a place where youth could come and learn about philanthropy on a web platform. That's really changed. Today, we serve youth face-to-face. So we run programs in conjunction with Evanston Township High School, North Shore Country Day School, lots of family foundations in Chicago, and more. And I didn't expect that to happen. That's part of figuring out what you're best at and doing more of it, and we've recognized that that's what we're best at. So I'm really thrilled to say that we'll likely be growing our work, not just here in Chicagoland, but in other Midwest regions in the near future, and that's really exciting for me. The true aspiration, though, is the stories that come out of that. It's where our youth, especially as they graduate from high school and go on to doing what they're doing, it's their stories and what they're doing now with their lives. I'll tell a really quick anecdote about one student who worked with us as a senior. She led this project where she raised funds for one of Allowance for Good's global partners. And Colette's interests are in fashion design merchandising. So she held a fashion show at a local middle school here and raised funds for our global partner in Guatemala at the time. And it was a really powerful experience for her because it ties right to what she loves personally. And that's what we really believe in at Allowance for Good. We believe in empowering youth to do what they want to do in their lives, going out and being poets, designing clothing, becoming musicians, being business leaders, but allowing them to infuse philanthropy into whatever they're doing in their lives. And so my aspirations haven't changed with our mission, but have changed with regard to the outcomes that we see each day.
Awesome. Well, when I started years ago, my focus was helping CPA and finance professionals. That was my background. That's the niche I went to, I was advised to. And as I grew, my clients changed. I found that I wasn't really inspired to help people land jobs, but it's really that helping people do the work that they're meant to do, working more with creative business owners, creative professionals. And so, it's like what happens, and I love that push, it was that I was marketing to a group who were interested in me, but were not buying from me. Has anyone had that experience? They're interested, but they're not interested to buy. And then really having to learn who wants me, who could best utilize me, who's saying, yes, I want to hire you, and then to get out of my own way and serve that market, and that continues to change. But I'm learning that, the answers are right there, but having to get out of my own way. And two things, and we can separate them, we can put them together. What do you love about being a business owner? And then what's ahead for your future? And we'd love to hear from everyone. What do you love about being a business owner? And what's ahead for your future? Yeah, connect to that love.
So much pressure. I love the freedom. And that freedom is completely up to me to let it be there or to put myself in my own jail. And you know what? It was always there. Even when I was working for somebody else, it was truly always there. It's just a lot easier to see running my own business. So I love leaning into that freedom and expanding into it, and then being able to use it to really create an impact that I can see. I mean, it's very tangible. We were filling sample coffee bags till midnight last night, but I woke up this morning and there they were on the counter, and so I see that I made an impact. And then what's ahead? Do you want to go to that right away, or do you want to keep with this one?
Yeah, let's hear that. What's ahead? What's ahead for your future?
Yeah, so being very young in the business, there's so much ahead, and I'll answer this maybe from a philosophical, lofty place, but I feel momentum. I just feel this, something is building, something is churning, and we're about to explode in a new, big way. We have tons of visions, and so the challenge for me right now is to just lean into that and have faith, kind of like the ground in January when it doesn't look like anything's going on, to just keep believing in that and look at the to-do list every day, figure out which one is the most important, put my energy towards that, and trust that the energy of all of the other forces around me is going to come to meet me and to meet us there so that we can continue the mission.
Okay. Love and what's ahead.
Okay. What I love. I mean, I love that I get to make bread every day, and I love that my business is a compilation of kind of all the random jobs I've ever had in my life that I thought were not leading me anywhere. I mean, they've all helped me. I grew up in a family, my mom had a knitting store, and so I was always like, I learned how to knit, and I thought, this is the most useless thing ever. And now, like, the packaging at our store, it's, tied to, like, using string, and it's like, I use fabric for our baguettes in the back, and I knew how to buy it at the fabric stores because I grew up, knowing, I go and buy linen, and I was a cross-stitcher and needle pointer, and it's like stuff that you really never thought you'd use, I'm using in a business, and I love that. And I love the people I work with. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's crazy. Sometimes I'm in the back in the kitchen, and I mean, it's like literally you're just sitting around talking about most random, obscure facts, and we don't Google anything because our hands have dough, so people will be like, I think the cheetah is really the fastest animal on the planet. We'll be like, no, that's totally not true. The hippo is. And it's like, for like 40 minutes, we'll just debate and debate and debate, and then I look around and it cracks me up because it's like, just talk. We just talk all day. And then I love working with the customers, some days, not all days. But for the most part, I really love interacting with people. And it's like I can retreat to the kitchen and work, or I can be in the front and engage with people and talk to people. And I feel really lucky about that people come into our store. So I feel like I get best of both worlds, solitude and then, community.
I love creating ripple effects. The Allowance for Good logo, if you take a look at it, the O is a series of ripple effects. And I really believe that the youth that we're reaching are going to go on and affect change both now and throughout their lifetimes in their communities locally and around the world. And there's nothing greater than, for example, taking a group of multi-generational individuals ranging from age 13 to age 60 to Nicaragua this summer and seeing them connect with our global partner on the ground, recognizing that at the core, we're all human, and at the core, we all aspire to achieve positive things in our lifetime. And my hope is that we're planting those seeds and among youth here in the Chicagoland area, hopefully in more places in the near future, but really that these youth are going on to affect change wherever they go throughout their lives.
What's ahead for the future?
I think I mentioned that we're going to be growing into a few new regions in the Midwest.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's ahead for us.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot, actually. When I think about it, I get a little overwhelmed. But one of the best parts about the future for us is feeling really confident that people are coming along and believing in the work that we're doing, and they're willing to take it on as their own. I reflect often on a meeting that I had at a major bank in Chicago about 6 months ago. And another individual who had recently known our work and funded us happened to be at this meeting. And I had already explained to the individual I was meeting with about Allowance for Good. She'd heard my story. The second individual who just funded us walks in the room, and she asks him, "So Ryan, would you be willing to tell me about Allowance for Good?" And he eloquently, articulately, perfectly echoed what I just said without having been in the room, and then I knew that this wasn't my story any longer, that it's the story of the people that we're working alongside.
Yeah, awesome. What I love about being a business owner, I'm in the process of teaching a master class, is I love helping people connect to their gifts and then use that gifts to change careers, launch new businesses, and grow in their field. And I'm thinking about one of my clients. It's actually the most senior client I have. He's close to 70, and he's a successful business owner and successful architect. And he's had a big vision for his life, but he was for the community that he lives in and for his business. And he was stuck. He was getting in his way. And I love working with clients like that, because like him or any clients who are like, no matter what, like age doesn't matter. Like I have this vision, I've had this dream, and I like help me bring it to life. And so that always it makes me cry. I'm known to cry with my clients when I just see their change and their transformation, and it's like, oh my gosh, like look at like the leaps that you've taken. That's just amazing to me still, and now I'm allowing myself to, they know that I'm going to cry. And what's ahead, one of the things that's ahead for my future, as we listen to our businesses, so many more and more aspiring career coaches, consultants and trainers are coming to me and saying, I want to do what you do. I want to do the work that you do. And years ago, someone said to me, Althea, what you're in a few years, you're not going to be coaching the end user. You're going to actually be training coaches to do the work that you do. And I was like, no. I was like, when you start a business, you know all the answers, right? So after the fifth person said this to me, one who I ran into while I was in Jamaica, and she's like, oh, I'm on your newsletter list. Are you Althea? Oh my gosh, I recognize you. And I'm like, okay, God, I hear you. So that's ahead for my future.
A big round of applause for our panelists.